For first-time homebuyers, the last couple of years have been brutal, with people constantly being beaten out in multiple offer bidding wars, ultimately pricing them out of the market. Now, what some people have chosen to do is relocate to a place like Texas, where jobs are plentiful, the economy is strong, and most importantly, the cost of living is a lot cheaper than where they're coming from. Now, if you're thinking about doing the same thing, there are some things you need to know about owning your very own first home in Texas. Let's get to it. Greetings from the little man in your phone or computer. My name is Jeff with Jeff West Properties, your host for the Conroe Living Channel, where we identify and celebrate everything that makes Conroe one of the fastest growing cities in America. Now, before we get to the heart of the video, I'm going to ask you to do all the internet things, click like and subscribe and all that stuff. This is a brand new channel and I would really appreciate the support. Also, if you're considering moving to Texas, or more specifically Conroe, make sure to click that notifications bell. I do weekly content that will let you know all about the city and make you feel like a local from the moment you step foot in town. Check out the channel, check out the videos, and if there's anything that they don't answer for you and you'd like more information, feel free to reach out to me at my contact information below. I help people every day move to the Lone Star State. And now on with the show. Owning a home is the American dream. Everybody's paying a mortgage, so you can either pay your own mortgage or you can pay someone else's, namely your landlord. So let's start with the basics of owning a home in Texas. Now, when you're looking over your budget to decide whether or not you can afford a house, it's important to note that a $400,000 house in one state or one area is not necessarily going to be the same monthly mortgage payment as you're going to get in another state or another area. There are several different factors that go into it. The first factor is your interest rate. Your interest rate that you get for borrowing money for the house is going to depend primarily on your own credit score. In essence, the higher the credit score, the more favorable your terms are going to be on your interest rate. Another thing to consider is when you're planning on buying. Without getting into an economics lesson, lenders set their interest rates based on current market conditions. So for instance, if you were to have bought a house last year, you could have gotten a mortgage rate as low as just below 3%. Whereas today, in a lot of cases, it's over 6%. That's just based on the market conditions. There's really nothing you can do about it. Now, there are other factors to the mortgage rate that are specific to Texas, and one of the biggest ones is property tax. Texas doesn't have a state income tax, which can be really helpful, but if you're a homeowner, that savings is almost offset by your property taxes. Texas has the 5th highest property taxes in the entire nation. Now, here's a personal example of this. I used to live in Arizona. I'm from Texas originally, but I moved to Arizona for a while and then I moved back. I sold my house in Arizona for $250,000 at the time, and my assumption was I was just going to buy a $250,000 house here in Texas. But because of the property taxes, what I found was in order to keep my monthly mortgage payment the same, I could only afford a $220,000 house. So there was a $30,000 difference in the price of the house. Now, the silver lining to that was that you get a lot more for your money in Texas. So a $220,000 house in Texas ended up being a lot more than what I got for $250,000 in Arizona. So it all kind of evens out. So your property tax rate has a huge impact on what you pay monthly in mortgage. Now, the good news is Texas doesn't have a standard property tax rate. In fact, it can vary even in cities. Like where I live now in Conroe, Texas, it can be as little as 1.9% all the way up to 3.4%. And in some parts of Texas, it can be even more than that. Now, one positive is you may be eligible to homestead your house. So talk to your local realtor to find out if you're eligible, because with a homestead, you can save a substantial amount on your taxes. Another tax savings happens when you turn 65, and it is a huge tax savings. It's one of the reasons Texas is such a great place to retire. I kind of get the feeling that if you're watching this video, you're not considering moving to Texas to buy a house for the first time to retire. But keep that in mind as you get older. There is huge savings coming, and again, another big reason so many people retire in Texas. Also, when it comes to insuring your home, you're not going to get a lot of relief there either. Texas has the 5th highest home insurance rates in the nation, averaging $3,400 a year. In Houston, it's $3,700 a year. Now, you can compare that to a place like California, which has an average home insurance price of only $1,600 a year. That's amazing to me. I go into greater detail in a different video as to why these things cost what they do, but in general, the best way for you to figure out all these numbers is to get pre-approved with a lender. Go to a lender and they're going to take all of your financial information, they're going to plug in all the numbers, and they're going to then let you know how much house you can afford and what all of those individual costs are going to be for you. If you're just researching buying a home, first thing you need to do, get a lender and get a realtor. A good realtor will be able to recommend lenders for you, and a good lender will be able to recommend good realtors for you. I would be happy to help you, and if I can't help you myself, I'll be happy to send you in the right direction. So let's say now you've been pre-approved, you've picked out your dream home, or at least your dream home for now, and you've had an offer accepted. Congratulations, you are now a homeowner in the great state of Texas. One of the biggest differences between renting and owning is when you are in a rental and something breaks, you just call your landlord to fix it. But when you own, you're on your own. When you own, you're on your own. I like that. I'm going to trademark it. So since you're going to be responsible when anything breaks, either having to fix it yourself or hire a repairman and spending a bunch of money to have it fixed.
Now write me a check quick before I come to my senses. $5,000.
It's important that you know what your house is made up of, what the potential pitfalls could be, so that you don't get caught off guard. One of the first things you want to do when you have an offer accepted on your house is to get a home inspection. The great thing about the process of buying a home is when you have an offer accepted, you enter into what's called an option period. That means you're not obligated necessarily to move forward with the purchase of the house. You are just having the option during that time period to decide whether you want to move forward with the purchase. During that option period, that's when you set up a home inspection, and the inspector will be able to find those things that may make you decide that you don't want to move forward. They may find bad termite damage or a crumbling foundation, or the house is built on an Indian burial ground.
Poltergeist in the closet.
Actually, I'm not sure if my inspectors can determine whether a house has been built on an Indian burial ground. You may want to bring along a priest just to be safe. Now, assuming you still want to move forward with the sale, that home inspection still serves two really good purposes. Number one, it gives you negotiating power with the seller, because if there's things you want to see fixed, you can walk away from the deal if they're not. And so they may want to renegotiate with you to fix those things so that the sale will go through. But let's say they don't. It's still good for you to have that inspection so that you'll know what is going on with your house and fix the things yourself that are necessary, or at least plan for the future on things that may need to be addressed later on. If you're planning on buying a house that's brand new, like straight from the builder, these things may not apply nearly as much because everything's going to be brand shiny and new, and the builder usually will give you a home warranty when you first purchase. But if it's a resale home, there may be more things to look into, and you'll want to make sure to at least monitor and address those things so they don't come back and surprise you later.
You need to get your house in order.
Now, there are several things that I recommend my clients routinely monitor to keep from having bigger problems later. One of those things is weather stripping. Weather stripping are the little strips that are on the bottom of windows and doors that whenever they close, it forms a seal. When you have weather stripping that deteriorates, you get problems with heating and cooling issues, or possible condensation that comes in from outside, which could create mold issues, which you definitely don't want. So I definitely recommend people monitoring those and replacing them when necessary. Similar to that, I have people monitor the sealants around things like their bathtubs and showers, their sinks, their toilets, their windows, because when those sealants break down, you could have water penetration issues that could lead to like thousands of dollars of damage, which you definitely don't want. We are talking about living in Texas, so you are definitely going to be relying heavily on your air conditioner. That's why it's imperative to make sure that you are routinely maintaining your HVAC system, your heating and your cooling system. The last thing you want is to be caught in the dead of summer and have your air conditioning go out.
That's hot.
I recommend that people routinely have their HVAC system serviced about once a year. Now, as well as that, there are some things you can do yourself periodically that will greatly maintain the health of your system. One of those things you need to do constantly is change your air filters. The air filters not only work on the air that you breathe, they also keep your system clean. So especially if you have pets or plants or things like that, changing your air filters regularly is a necessity. Also, clean your condenser unit. The condenser unit is the thing that usually sits outside and has the big fan blades that rotate. Those things can get gunked up with dirt and grass and pollen, which if you're going to live in Texas, at least in this part of Texas, you're going to become intimately familiar with. So you can take a water hose and just spray it off every 6 months to keep it working well. Finally, make sure to routinely check your system's drain pipe. If you don't know where that is, your inspector can show you, but it's usually going to be up in the attic. Now, those things can usually get clogged up with algae or just general gunk, and when that happens, it can cause your drip pan to overflow. And you definitely don't want that happening, because if you let it go that long, you're going to find out whenever you start seeing water rings around your ceiling, or eventually the ceiling even caves in. So you can maintain that by using a shop vac to blow it out, or even using something like Drano or bleach pouring into the lines to clean it out. Speaking of Texas weather, if you have a deck, anything outside that's made of wood, you're definitely going to want to treat that and seal it consistently. What happens in the Texas weather is it causes the wood to expand and contract, which causes warping and cracking. So you definitely want to seal it to keep that from happening. Now, unless you're living in a condo or townhome community, more than likely you're going to have a yard that you're going to need to maintain. Now, if you're a botanist or a horticulturist, or even if you like mowing your own lawn, great, you're going to save yourself some money. But if that's not your thing, you can find lawn crews pretty much every day on every other street in the neighborhood. You could just drive through the neighborhood and look for one, and they'll normally charge somewhere between $30 to $100 per visit, depending on the size of your lawn. Another thing you're probably going to want to do is reseed your lawn every spring so that you get new growth and the grass is healthy. There are some specific areas with some specific issues, like areas with a lot of trees. I live in East Texas in the Piney Woods region, and anytime you have lawns with a lot of trees, you're going to have issues either with shading that causes issues with grass growing, or the trees are just going to soak up all the water, which will also lead to issues. So those are going to be specific things that you'll need to address depending on where you live. One final maintenance item that you have to prepare for is pest control. You can do it yourself, or you can hire a pest control company, but for instance, where I live in the woods region, you're going to have issues with roaches, you're going to have issues with rodents.
It's scary, like the movie Ratatouille.
And termites. The roaches can get really big, and some of them can actually even fly out here. Now, my friends made me say that because they really would hope that people would get freaked out and not want to move here because Texas is growing too much.
Don't come out here.
But nevertheless, it actually is true. Now, the roaches are more of a nuisance, but the rodents and the termites, that's a big deal because they could cause lots of very, very costly repairs. So again, my recommendation is just hire a pest control company. You can usually get routine maintenance from a pest control company for about $400 to $600 a year, and it's well worth it.
Get out! You and all your rat buddies!
So I wanted to give you a basic list of the things that are most common with homeowners having to maintain, but by no means is it an extensive list. Look, I'm a realtor, I'm not Tim the Toolman Taylor. If you want to learn how to fix anything, you could pretty much learn it all by going and finding YouTube videos just like this one. I do have a word of advice though. As a realtor, stay in your lane, I guess. I have had so many calls from previous clients asking me for electricians, plumbers, drywall specialists, because they decided to do it themselves, and their fixes ended up creating much bigger problems for them that they needed a professional to fix. My advice is always keep a little bit of money set aside for some repairs that inevitably will need to happen, because that's just the price of home ownership. Speaking of budgeting, the list that I'm giving you is how to maintain things. But look, inevitably, if you live in a house long enough, there are going to be some things that need to be replaced. That's just part of home ownership. And some of those things can be really expensive. So you definitely want to make sure to set some money aside for the big things that will eventually need to be replaced, like an air conditioning system or a roof. There's a term we use in the home investment community called deferred maintenance, which means when you defer or totally avoid fixing something, when you put off fixing something because you don't have the resources to do it. Don't get yourself in that position. If you do, you'll end up having to possibly come up with thousands of dollars on the spot to fix something, or even worse, you're going to have to go without a roof or an air conditioner. Or if you are planning on selling the house down the road and you don't take care of those things, you could end up having to replace them for the new owner and run the risk of losing thousands of dollars in the sale. So you want to stay on top of that. What I recommend to my clients is once they get their home inspection for the first time, they start putting a budget together, looking what it will cost to eventually replace those big ticket items and start budgeting into the future for those things. Also anticipating what it's going to cost in the future, because the reality is what a roof costs today may not cost the same thing when it's actually time to be replaced. It could be 20-30% more. So you want to look at all those things and budget accordingly. Here's a basic outline of replacement times for the major components in your home, assuming the house is new. HVAC systems usually last around 20 years. Appliances vary, but you can count on probably every 10 years. That is, unless you have one of those mustard-colored 1970s refrigerators that refuse to die. Those things are like family heirlooms that get passed down from generation to generation. Otherwise, every 10 years. Your roof should last about 25 to 30 years, depending on the extreme weather conditions. Now, one benefit of living where I live in Southeast Texas is we tend to get a lot of hailstorms. You may wonder why that's a benefit, because it probably sounds like it sucks, right? Well, because we have hailstorms, oftentimes insurance companies will actually pay to fix or even replace the roof. So insurance will cover it instead of you having to fork over $10,000 to $30,000 to replace your own roof. That is one of the benefits of having the 5th highest home insurance rates in the nation. Now, as far as your plumbing system, your electrical system, those usually have a longer shelf life, somewhere between 40 to 70 years. So aside from, replacing the occasional flange or sink gasket, I'm pretending those are words. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm not a plumber. But aside from the little things, you can count on those systems lasting most of your time in home ownership. Now, the exception would be if you buy a house from the 1960s or so, you'll definitely want to have those things thoroughly inspected and replaced if necessary. I've renovated a lot of 1950s, 60s, 70s houses, and I have had to replace a lot of those systems. So there you have it, some of the most common expenses that you will face with being a first-time homeowner. Now, you may notice that I didn't really cover any of the other costs of living in Texas. I do have another video that addresses that as well, so you may want to check it out here. Thanks for watching.